Hi guys, welcome to Module 1, Part A of the UX Winter Sprint Training. So first, we're going to go over some brief introductions, and then I'm going to give you an introduction to design, and Hassan is going to talk to you about stakeholder maps and empathy maps, and then we're going to tell you your assignments and reminders for this week. So I am a sophomore currently at the University of Rochester, and I'm double majoring in computer science and digital media studies. So some of my hobbies include embroidery, jigsaw puzzles, ice skating, and I also love to watch movies, TV shows, and YouTube. So I first got started in UX when I took a course called Design in a Digital Age at my college, my freshman year. And from that course, so me and a couple of my classmates worked to create a product from start to finish. And from doing that, I realized that I really liked UX. And so I participated in the June session of STEM Away as a participant, where me and my team created or redesigned the STEM Away navigation bar. And then in the July session, I became a project lead where I led a team of two subgroups, and one of these groups redesigned the STEM Away messaging system, and the other one um, redesigned the one-click resume from the student side. At the same time I was doing this, I was also working on the corporate dashboard from STEM Away, which is the one-click resume, but the recruiter side of things. And I worked with a team of other STEM Away students, and we worked with Debelina to create whatever she wanted. It was a very iterative process. And now, in my sophomore year of college, I have joined a startup at my school as a UX researcher called Hospapal, which is an app that aims to streamline communication between physicians and patients.
Hello, everyone. I'm also a sophomore at University of Rochester. I'm double majoring in computer science and business. Some of my hobbies are, playing soccer, workout, traveling, and thinking about finding solution to big problems. Some of my prior UX experiences are I was also June session participants like Fiona, where me and my team worked on the landing page of the StemAway website, and then I fell in love with UX, so I became the project lead for July session, where my we divide our teams into two groups. So one group worked with the homepage of the StemAway, and the other group worked with the messaging system of StemAway. I also have prior experience with creating a website for my residential hall association club. I also designed a curriculum for our Google Developer Student Club in our school, where I taught them how to create a app from start to end using the Flutter app.
So now I'm going to give you an introduction to design. So first, let's establish what isn't design. So design isn't just trying to look pretty. It's also not overly complicated. And it's not creating an idea simply because it sounds interesting, right? Just because an idea is interesting doesn't mean that it's going to be useful. So if you do have an idea that you think sounds interesting, you would want to validate that idea by doing UX research. Will my idea help people? Will people actually want to use it? So then what is design? Design is it's easy to understand while being pleasant to the eye. It's simple, it's intuitive, it's useful, and it's also problem solving with a plan, with a strategy. So this is Dieter Rams, and he came up with the 10 principles for good design. These are just 5 of them, but he says that good design is useful, it's aesthetic, it's understandable, it's thorough, and he says that good design is little design. So then more specifically about UX design, then what's good UX design? So good UX design is first usable. And what does it mean to be usable? To be usable means that you're effective. And to be effective means that you get the job done. Usability is also efficiency, right? So not only do you get the job done, but you get the job done with minimal effort and with minimal time. And lastly, usability is satisfying. So not only does it get the job done with quickly and with little effort, but it also gets the job done and it gets the job done well, right? The user is happy, is satisfied with their outcome. Next, Good UX design is aesthetic, so it looks good. But let's look at this example. So this was a design that used to belong on a website, and it's not there anymore because, as you'll soon see, this isn't very good. This isn't very good design. So basically, this was what was on the website, and for the user to read these words, they would have to hover over either the blue on the top or the red on the bottom. When they hovered over this blue on the top, this would show up. But what you'll see is that this isn't good design, and why? So, um, this isn't very functional, right? This isn't very useful because when you look at just this top part, you can't tell at all really what the blue and what the red is saying. They all just kind of blend together. So its usability, not very good. And even after you hover over this blue part and you see this text up, this area in the bottom, and you see this text emerge, you'll see that it's not very usable either. Because when we think about creating a good design, we want to think about accessibility, right? We want to consider people with different disabilities and such. So for those who are visually impaired, this might be a little harder to read. These black letters, they kind of may blend together with the grayer letters at the background. And we want to, in general, if we were to have this design, ideally we would want the user to be able to tell what the blue text and what the red text is saying without having to go all the way across this design just to see what they're saying. Now this is Craigslist, so this is very usable. The user can choose whatever they want very easily. They can choose it by category, they can choose it by location, they can choose it by the date, but this isn't very aesthetic at all. It's quite boring. However, what we now see is that although this is more usable and less aesthetic, and the earlier example was more aesthetic and less usable, it's more important for a design to be more usable than more aesthetic, right? If you have a design and it's usable but not very pretty, it still gets the job done. So the user will still want to use it. But if you have something that's very pretty but not usable, then what's the point of using it? Why would the user use it if it can't do what they want it to do? They're not going to use it only because it looks pretty. And lastly, good UX design is delightful. So, for example, this is Bing, and Bing always has these beautiful photos in the background when you're searching for something. And these photos don't actually contribute to what they're searching for, right? You don't need these photos to be able to find what you're looking for. But by adding these photos, you're making the user's experience more delightful. Similarly here, we have this dinosaur game that users can play when their internet is down. And this doesn't actually change much of their situation at all if you think about it, right? Their internet is down, they're frustrated, and even when they play this dinosaur game, their internet is still down. Their situation remains the same. However, by giving them this dinosaur game to play, it's fun, right? It's more delightful. So the user is not going to be as frustrated as they would be without the dinosaur game. So now that you know what isn't design, what is design, what's good UX design, think about these two posters and think about whether these are examples of good design or examples of bad design. All right, so starting with the poster on the left, right away, you might notice that the text with the font being used for a live video shoot, this isn't very legible, right? Some parts of the font are so very wide and the others are so very thin. And so this is already text that's kind of harder to read. But this plus that kind of background, this pink and green and all these circles, that makes it even harder to read. And if we look at the bottom of this poster, this black text is right on top of this lady's arm, which is also black. And these might blend together. And for those who, like we said, are visually impaired, this might be harder for them to read. If we look at the poster on the right, this is just a lot of colors being thrown at our face, and we're very overwhelmed by what we're seeing. We don't really know where to look, right? With good UX, we want to be able to, in a sense, if needed to, take the user on like a journey, right? So we'll cover this in later weeks, but we want a hierarchy of information, and we're not getting that here. We don't know where to look first. We don't know where to go after. We don't know where to end, right? We're being pulled right in the center, this hamfest, bright red and bold letters. But at the same time, red is very alert in color. And we're also drawn to the red at the top and the bottom. We're drawn to the yellow. We're drawn to everything. There's all these colors thrown in our face, and we don't know where to go first. Next, think about whether this is an example of good design or bad design. So if you said bad design, then you are absolutely correct, right? This is very unintuitive. When we see this big bar, I'm sure we've all experienced it before, right? We walk into um or we expect to walk into this big bar and have the door open for us because we think it's going to be a push door, but then it doesn't move and we're like, oh wait, it says pull. And on the other hand, we'll see these two handles sticking out at us and we'll think, okay, that means to pull. But at the same time, that door might be a push door, right? So this is very unintuitive, and we don't want our design to be unintuitive because then the user is not going to understand the design. They're going to be more frustrated if they don't understand what the product is doing or why it's not doing what they think it's going to do. So if you in your design have a button and the user thinks that the button when they click it is supposed to do something, then that button when they click it better do that thing that they're thinking, right? You don't want the user to be confused by your design. And so this is an example of good design. This is the Fletcher capstan table. And as you'll see on the left, when you start with a small table and then when you pull it, it opens up to this big table. So it's usable, right? It gets the job done and it makes the table bigger. At the same time, it opens in a very satisfying way, right? It's very aesthetic, very delightful. It doesn't just open in a boring way. It comes out in like a something like reminiscent of a snowflake or a flower. Very pretty. So it's usable, it's aesthetic, and it's delightful. So after this video, you guys might want to think of some everyday examples of good design and bad design.
Okay, so we are just going to look at some UX frameworks. It's just not applied for UX, but UI or any design projects that we do, we always follow these 5 steps. We start with empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and testing. We'll go more in depth for each of them as we progress through our weeks. But today we'll look more into our empathize section. So for empathize section, we start with our stakeholders and stakeholders map. So who are our stakeholders? The majority of our stakeholders are our consumers or users of our products. It could be industries or markets, for example, competitors. Whenever you're creating your product, you always look at what your competitors are doing so that you can find the point of differentiation so that you give your consumer incentive to buy your products other than your competitors. And then we look at our other stakeholders are our company supporters who are our suppliers and investors. You can divide stakeholders into many ways, but what I've seen from a lot of UX resources that they usually divide stakeholders into 2 different types, which are internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Internals are the people who in our company are involved with our product directly. It could be people who are making our product or who are giving us ideas about that. External stakeholders are most of the users or outside suppliers. They're not actually involved in the creating of the product, but they're still giving us feedback based on that, and they will be our end users. So when we look at this stakeholders map, the first question we usually ask is that how can I take care of all the stakeholders when we're designing our product? For example, in the last slide, we looked at it could be consumers. These are just broad categories, but inside consumers, there could be a lot of other categories too. So how can we take care of all the stakeholders when we're designing our product? Simple answer is we don't. We have to prioritize using our stakeholders map. So what are the steps to create our stakeholders map? We start with all the stakeholders that we can think of, whoever using our product, going back again, who's in our industries, who is in our markets, who are our company supporters. Then we categorize them into 3 to 4 main categories. We set a priority for each category, and then we build a connection between all of the stakeholders. And here's the important note that you should remember: we can never make everyone happy. So we always start with the stakeholders map to prioritize who's more important. So here's a simple example of stakeholders map that I used over the summer. So we start with core. That's where the most important that will be those are the people who will benefit the most with our design. Then we have direct, and then we have indirect, and then you learn more about this, what each of them are, and I will go over it. So what are the importance of stakeholders map? We can learn our users and everyone connected to our products. It also helps to highlight concerns of different stakeholders. We find out who has more influence over our product, find out who will benefit the most, and have a game plan and get ready to roll. So whenever we make the stakeholders map, we always look at who's going to benefit the most using our design. So whoever benefit the most should be in our core, and then as we spread out, the benefit gets lower and lower. So core will be somewhere, maybe our users who will be directly involved using our end products. Direct will be maybe our suppliers or investors who are going to make profit out of that. And indirect are the people, maybe marketers, who are going to market our products, or other companies who are going to use other companies who are going to use our products. And then we move to empathy map. So for empathy map, what are the importance? It helps us to learn about our users. So stakeholders map, it tells us who our users are, but empathy map goes more in depth, which helps us to find the needs. And in the future we'll see how can we come up with the solutions. So, and then second one is understanding of our users. How do they think? What do they do? What do they see? Those stuff. Prevent companies from wasting resources. For example, redesigning the whole product. Before UX was famous, a lot of times people do the design first, and then they give the end product to see how it's doing. But oftentimes, what happened is that they didn't like it. The users straight up said, "No, we don't like it. It's not easy to use. It's not intuitive." So what they had to do, they get all those feedback. They had to they had to design the whole product again. That wastes a lot of resources, our time, and also money. So UX helps us, and especially the empathy map helps us to find all those problems before we even face them, and before we do the actual design process. We know our problems, and what we're going to work on. And then lastly, it provides resources for our next UX step process, which will work on affinity diagram, our interview process, and also personas. So when is it done? Usually empathy map, it could be done before or after, or it could be before and after research. It's really up to you how you guys prefer. So if you use it before, you'll mainly use it as a hypothesis, and then after, or if you use it after, you're basically validating your claim or make necessary changes. So so the actual question we ask is that how do you empathize with our users and how do you understand them? And the best solution is to actually create empathy map using the stakeholders that we already know from our stakeholders map. So empathy map usually consists of 4 parts. Those are the most important parts of our empathy map, which is our how do our users think, what do they hear, what do they see, and what do they do. And here's an example of our empathy map. As I said, that these are the 4 important parts, which is think and feel. What do they hear, say, and do, and see? And over here in the middle, you can have a picture so that it looks as real as possible. And here's some supplemental portion that makes it more alive. So we start with who's actually who's this map is developed for. So in that case, this will be you will choose one of the core you will choose one of the core over here. When we do the stakeholders map, you'll choose one of the you'll how you'll categorize them, you'll prioritize them. So you will choose one of the core stakeholders, and then the whole map is going to be based on that. And that's you'll think about what those four steps that we talked about, like what do they think and feel, hear, see, say, and do. All of these are going to be based on what do they actually think. And here, if you look at the bottom two rows, it has pain and gain. Pain is what actually do they face, and gain is what do they actually like. So we're mostly going to focus on pain because that's where the actual problem is, and then we have to find a solution based on that. And here's an example of what I have done over the summer when I was the participant. So I chose one of the so that was when we were doing the landing pages for our SEMA website. So I chose one, two most important stakeholders from our core portion of the stakeholder map, which is our high school and college students, and the business looking for current and or future employees. So what do they think? For high school students, they look for internship opportunities, and for business, they usually look for find students to or future employees. And what do they hear? Students, they hear there's a great internship opportunities for college students in STEM fields, and you can also invite your friends, and then those friends can invite other friends. And what do they say and do? They serve through the website. They can create new topics, or they can ask, reply to the different topics. And then what do they see? They can see different opportunities that someone has to provide, and they can also look at other social media that it is connected to. For the pain, this is the most important part where we saw that they have to spend a lot of time to fully understand all the aspects of the website. And our solution will be totally based on that. And here's some gains, which is plus point for plus point for our product that we're designing. And we're not going to go mostly with this because it's already doing fine. So the gain was that it has a lot of internship and learning sectors to choose from, which is good for different students who can choose from different variety of sectors to learn more or to gain more experience. Then, so that ends our empathy map and stakeholders map. And here's your assignments.
So, like I said before, you guys are going to think about everyday objects with good UX design and bad UX design, right? You can also even choose a website. You can also, so it doesn't have to be an object. It doesn't have to be a website. One can be an object. One can be a website. And then the second one, Hisson can explain.
Yes. So for the second one, you are going to choose one of the following companies. Could be Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Zoom, Craigslist, whichever you prefer or whichever you're most comfortable with. Then you're going to create an empathy map and stakeholders map using one of these companies. But make sure you stay consistent. For example, if you decide to do Facebook for empathy map, do the same thing with stakeholders map. Don't switch. And for my assignments, which is to create empathy map stakeholders map, you can use this template for empathy map, and for stakeholders map, you can use this, or you can always change the categories to as you like. And I'm going to give you some resources how you can um, do it. Like for example, when I did over the summer, I used this extension where I could have type on top of it and then take a screenshot so that I have a copy for myself. Okay, so here's some important reminders. So first of all, make sure you go look at our post, fill out the poll for the office hours. And it's very important because we want to know what time all of you are available. And we want to make sure the time that we choose for the office hours where we can have almost all of you. And also finish assignment in the module. Try your best, finish as much as you can to get the most experience out of this UX sprint.
And when you finish your assignments, you can write about them as well in your self assessments. Although that's not all your self assessment is. Your self assessment, um, you can look at my post for the description on how you should or what you should include in them. But be sure also to write about your assignment in your self assessment. What did you struggle with completing the assignment, or just a brief reflection on the assignment? Also, come up with any questions for office hours this Sunday. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can definitely just reply to them in the forum or reply to our posts in the forums, and we'll try our best to answer them.
And that's the end of our module 1 part 8. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.